missing the
D.
Um, I have like some notes of questions that I want to ask, but we can freestyle it. If there's anything that you want to talk about specifically, just jump in. But first, I wanted to just introduce you and talk about who you are and what you do in Detroit.
Okay. I didn't hear. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. I said I want to just introduce you. If you can tell us who you are and what you do in Detroit.
Oh, okay. My name is Ryan Myers Johnson. I am a Detroit-based choreographer and curator of site-specific performance art. So I produce a festival called Sidewalk Festival of Performing Arts, and it is a festival that takes place outdoors in a neighborhood called Brightmoor, and we don't use any traditional stages. Everything takes place on the streets, in courtyards, alleys, storefronts, community gardens, and the purpose is basically to give a platform to independent and alternative artists doing really interesting work. We also really want to focus on building some artistic bridges across neighborhoods. Right now, Detroit is experiencing this artistic renaissance, and a lot of it's centered around Midtown and Corktown, some of the more downtown areas, which is really awesome. I love that, but we really want to highlight some of the other neighborhoods in Detroit. What are some of the great things that are happening on the outskirts? And also, we just want to create a dialogue around modern alternative performance. So, in a nutshell, that's what I do. I also dance with a few local companies and choreographers and produce my own work when I'm not crazy with Sidewalk.
That's so awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the companies that you dance with on the side? It's funny because I was in Detroit like '07, '08 doing research on the dance companies out there, and it was like crickets. I mean, you have your institutions who were like, who have always been on the scene. I don't want to discredit them, but you had the companies who were associated with State University, with Marymount.
Yeah.
There were like a handful of companies, but there wasn't enough for me to do like research.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So can you talk about the companies that you're dancing with now?
Yeah, so I dance primarily with a company called Lamar and Dancers. It's headed by choreographer Lisa Lamar. She really focuses a lot on I guess improvisation. We do a lot with experimental jazz musicians, a lot of site-specific work, and so usually I'm dancing with Lisa, and she's in the Michigan or in Detroit area. She's a Michigan-based dancer. So that's Lamar and Dancers. Also, I actually have a show tonight and tomorrow with a choreographer who's actually new to the area, Adeshola Akindele. She's recently moved here from London, and the piece that we're working on with her is really interesting. It's a study on women and working conditions, particularly women who have worked in factories in Flint and Detroit, so the dancers sort of embody the story. So Adeshola's work really focuses a lot on women, particularly women of color and working class women, and sort of the things that they're going through. I really appreciate Adeshola's approach because it's actually research that is embodied in dance. So there's a huge lecture component, creative lecture. So there's actually, while we're dancing, there's actually a really creative sort of performance / lecture that she gives based on her research working with women in factories. So that's really interesting. And then I also work for a company called Heritage Works. The focus of Heritage Works is to bring dances from the African diaspora into the public dialogue and into the forefront. So we do lots of traditional West African dance. We work a lot with young people. We have a summer internship program that actually starts in July, where we actually hire Detroit-based youth to come in and study with guest choreographers, get work set on them, and then they perform in a lot of the major festivals that happen in Detroit over the summer.
That's amazing. Now, Heritage has been around for a minute, right?
Yeah, Heritage is, this may be the 16th year for Heritage Works, so yeah, Heritage Works definitely has roots in Detroit.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. So I also wanted to just back it up a little bit to give people a little background. We've been knowing each other for forever now.
Yeah.
Um, we first met at the Detroit High School for the Fine and Performing Arts. Well, that's when it was called.
Yeah, now Detroit
Fine
School
and Performing
Months.
Arts, and now it's DSA.
Mm.
Um, and then we also went to Michigan together.
Yay.
Um, I left, but I mean, it still was a great experience.
Yeah.
um, and then you were also living out here in New York City for a minute.
Yeah.
And then when did you move from New York to go back to Detroit?
So I was in New York, in Brooklyn, mostly for, okay, I'm getting older. So I moved from Brooklyn to Japan for a year in, I think, 2008. And then I came back for just a hot second to do some performances in New York. And then I moved to Detroit, I believe, in 2009, 2010, something like that. Probably more like 2009. Yeah.
Awesome. So that leads me to my next question. What made you go back to Detroit?
Well, I always knew that I would return to Detroit. That was sort of part of my long-term, 10, 15-year goal was to kind of branch out, see more of the world, be a muse. That was my entire reasoning for moving to New York. I wanted to experience other choreographers, and at the time, like you said, there wasn't a lot of things for a dancer to do, and I was also really interested in film. I actually studied film and dance. So when I went to New York, I worked on a lot of different interesting projects. I worked in film for a few years, actually, and the same when I came back to Detroit, I worked really intensively in film. And so at the time, when I graduated from university, there wasn't that opportunity. So I, thought I will go, I'll live other places, I'll do lots of other things, I'll kind of travel. And when I'm ready to be an entrepreneur, I'll come back to Detroit. And so it was just the time. When I came back from Japan, I was doing a lot of the same things I was always doing, like, performing and working at a restaurant, like that sort of thing. And I thought, I feel like I'm ready to make my own work, and, there's some really specific things I want to do and say about Detroit. And I found that as an artist, a lot of the work that I do is rooted in community, and it's place-based, and it's based on my life experiences. And I know Detroit so well, I just didn't feel like I have as much to say about Brooklyn. I love Brooklyn, but it wasn't my heart. Detroit is my heart, and so I just felt like it was a perfect opportunity to come back.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. It's like, Detroit really pulls at the heartstrings, right?
Yeah.
Especially if that's your hometown, like we go hard. We go hard for Detroit.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. So tell us what inspired you to start the festival?
Well, at U of M, we started experimenting with outdoor performance and just doing performance in different spaces. And then when I went to New York, that's almost all that I did was performances. I danced with Abigail Levine, who's a choreographer working in New York, and most of her work is outside, or it's place-based, or it's entering a public thoroughfare. It's taking art out of its traditional spaces. And so I feel like Detroit is the perfect place for that, because we have so many interesting things to look at architecturally. And then I also feel that this sort of socioeconomic divide that we have in Detroit is present in the arts world as well. There's a limited access, and then I think there's also questions of who owns what or who belongs where. And so I just wanted to break that down and just present particularly artists of color who are doing really interesting work directly to people. I wanted to make it as democratic as possible, so there is no theater. You do not have to enter through the theater space and sit in a seat and kind of go through this ritual. You can just sort of go about your regular day, your regular way, and still get this exposure to performance. So I'm seeking to put things like classical ballet, you know, hip hop, all sorts of things, experimental jazz, directly on the street in front of people with very little space between the performers and the audience members. And then we also do a lot of interactive work. I feel like the neighborhood of Brightmoor, the northwest side, has been sort of branded as this tough place, and people think, oh, they're not interested in getting involved in art, but actually they are. You know, our last year's Sidewalk Festival, the interactive work was amazing. I saw more audience participation than I almost ever have, you know, in the type of outdoor work I do. People were really excited to get up and get involved with the performances, and so I wanted to just provide that opportunity. And then in Detroit, we do have a lot of site-specific work that happens, but it tends to happen more on the down low, meaning like you kind of have to be in with the right people to kind of know where these happenings are happening. And so, yeah, it's kind of like I almost feel like some of our independent art is a kind of elitist. It's not even class-based. It's just more like I'm on the new artistic forefront, and this is kind of our movement, you know. But I want to open that up to just the average person who is not an artist but would totally love to be a part of this movement.
That's amazing, Ryan. I'm so happy that you're doing this stuff. It's like so needed, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but all of this is like super interesting. So I'm going to try to ask you just like a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I also noticed that you made an announcement the other day on Facebook that you're a finalist for the Knight Foundation grant.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Congratulations.
Thank you. So the Knight Arts Challenge is a great program that launched last year, I believe, in Detroit, in which the Knight, I don't know what the amount of money is, but it's kind of large. They've dedicated a large sum of money to developing interesting avant-garde art in Detroit. So the way the challenge works is that you submit a 150-word statement about what your project is, what your proposal is, and anyone can submit. Don't have to be an organization or a nonprofit. So because of that, you get thousands of applications, and the way it works is that you apply with your 150 words, which is kind of hard to put your whole idea. You know, that's basically like 5 sentences, maybe less. To put your whole idea in that, and from there they choose what ideas they like. And what it is a matching grant. So you submit your budget, that sort of thing, for how much you want from the Knight Foundation, and then you have to raise the other amount. So if you submit, for example, you ask the Knight Foundation for $50,000, then you also need to raise $50,000, which right. I think is a great part of the grant, you know, because it gets people moving out there. It's not just, you know, give me this money, but you actually have to work with it. And so yeah, and so Sidewalk was a finalist this year out of a couple thousand applications, so I feel really blessed. You know, there's so many great ideas out there. I'm just happy to be a part of the lineup. Yeah, but in the past, you know, Sidewalk has been greatly supported by nonprofits and their foundations. So we've had support from the Knight Foundation, Skillman Foundation, Kresge Arts in Detroit. So yeah, we've been really blessed in that regard, but this would be a really great boost for Sidewalk.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I mean, the thing about it is whenever you have great ideas, you have great artwork, it's not hard to get the support. And Detroit is like booming right now as far as the art. So it's like you really struck the route while it was hot.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you too this summer. So
I know. Well, that leads to the second to last question. Just tell everyone when the Sidewalk Festival for Performing Arts will be happening, and so specifically like the dates and the times. And then you mentioned the Brightmoor location, but if you could be a little more specific.
Yeah. So Sidewalk is August 2nd. It's the first Saturday in August. The times are 3 to 9 p.m. And Brightmoor is on the northwest side of Detroit, so the festival takes place at Grand River in Lasser at a place called Artist Village. So we have community garden, a number of really interesting, beautifully tagged outdoor courtyards, and we recreate an alley as an art alley. We use this. You close down the street. There's lots of interactive sculpture and participatory projects all throughout the street. We also have a lot of music that happens at a place called the Temple of Dreams, which is a repurposed wooden pavilion, and also in the community garden. So all throughout the neighborhood of Old Redford and Brightmoor, we'll be having different events. August 2nd.
August 2nd. Don't forget it. 3 to 9 p.m. You said Grand River and Lasser?
Yep, Grand River and Lasser. And if that's, still, where is that? That we have our, strong presence on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, all that stuff. So follow us, friend us, like us.
The website is?
It's www.sidewalkdetroit.com.
Sidewalkdetroit.com. And then just to close the show, I want to ask everyone, you're my first interview, by the way.
Woo, honored.
But I always want to end the show with tell everyone what they're missing in the D.
Wow. I mean, there's so much entrepreneurship going on in Detroit. I love working in Detroit. If you're an artist, it's a great place to be because you can actually work a lot. There's a huge amount of interest in all of the arts, from dance to music, especially jazz and different types of independent rock. This year is just so busy for me in terms of performances. Tomorrow I'm double booked for performances, and it's just super exciting. I feel like it's almost this artistic revolution happening on all fronts. And then not just that, but we have this amazing explosion of urban farming, urban gardening, urban homesteading. So I love it. I feel like every day is really exciting. And, don't believe the hype. Come here and, experience what we're really doing. So.
Yay! Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I can't wait to participate in the festival this year.
Awesome. I can't wait to have you.
All right. So see you soon.
See ya.